Hey, what's going on, guys? Back with another deck video. Gonna try this style out one more time, just because I already had it set up since the last video, and I figured I would just do it anyway. So we're going to kind of hop off of that train of lower powered decks and hop over to the cEDH side of things. So this deck that I'm going to show you today is by no means a 10 out of 10 cEDH deck. If anything, it's probably a high powered deck that if I were to put more money into would be a cEDH deck. But when it comes down to it, I don't really have that money to put into decks, nor do I really want to buy certain cards. So when I start talking about it, I will kind of highlight some of the cards that you're not going to see in this deck that would be obvious includes and pieces that would just blow this deck out of proportion. But every once in a while, I kind of stumble upon either an infinite or I stumble upon a commander that I'm kind of like, I bet you I could do something with that. And I tried to build this commander twice until I realized that a lot of my friends just have very high powered decks, and I need to come up with some high powered decks to be able to compete against them. So you guys have seen, if you've watched the other videos on my channel, my Goanra Kodama deck, which is my like high powered mono green stompy fast beatdown deck. I have my Omnath Locus of Mana, where I create kind of infinite mana and do different things to utilize that infinite mana to win. But other than that, I think those are the only like high powered commanders that have been shown on here. Today I'm going to talk to you about Zirda the Dawnwaker. So I have a nice foil version of it. My friend had sitting in his trade binder. And I thought, well, that's an interesting companion to build around. So I tried to build a companion deck out of it. Thought, I don't really like how this plays as a companion. I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy having to bring it out and do stuff and then it being kind of shown and then just killed. So I tried to build it as an equipment commander. And then I realized there's just better equipment commanders and this really doesn't help out that much. But then I thought, I remember that the one precon did cycling and that I could do something around that. So Zirda the Dawnwaker is one colorless hybrid red white. It's an elemental fox. It does have companion. And it says activated abilities you control that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana below 1. You could pay 1, tap it, so that target creature can't block this turn. So, there's a couple infinite pieces that already just infinite just with Zirda. One of which is not in this deck, that is Grim Monolith because of the price. But basically, there's ways to kind of create an infinite by doing things like that to create infinite mana, and then you just use something as an outlet. And then also, I have in here the Toothpick combo, which is Brash Tonner and the sword, I think it's Blazing Steel. I'll show you in a little bit. And I believe there's even another enchantment that you can get. I don't have, but I might be wrong about that. I still need to order a couple pieces and remove a couple pieces from this deck. But basically, you either cycle and kind of get to the pieces you need to, or cycle through your deck and create a situation where your board is just really strong, or you could Zenith Flare people. So I'll start running through pieces of this deck. Immediately after reading this, I just realized I don't think Prismite does what I thought it would in this deck. Originally, my idea was to put 1 into this to create 1, but I believe that still counts as a mana ability, so I don't think this works. So my idea was to pay 1 into this to create 1 mana of any color to turn colorless mana into colored mana, but disregard that card, I don't think it works. So a lot of these cards, you're either going to see, and I'm going to say it's there for cycling, it's bad, or I'll explain why it's in the deck. So, Granatic Titan, 4 colorless, 2 red. You're never going to do that. It cycles for 2. But if our commander's out, it cycles for 1. Goblin Engineer, 1 colorless, 1 red. When it enters, you may search your library for an artifact card, put that card into your graveyard. Then you may pay 1, tap it, sack an artifact to return an artifact card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This allows you to retrieve your Basalt Monolith, which when it hits the battlefield, you're able to just infinite with Zirda. Bahal's Invoker, 2 colorless, 1 red. The reason this is in here is its ability. You may Pay 8 and deal 4 damage to each opponent. I'm not sure how clear that is. This is just the best camera I have right now. But if you have infinite mana, this just automatically kills everybody in response. And there's nothing they could really do about it because they would have to do something with split second, basically. Because even if they do something to respond to you activating it, you could just activate it on top of that. Brawlin, nice card to have out. 3 colorless, 1 red. Its partner's not in here because its partner's white and blue. You may still shuffle when you play this if you want to, which could matter. Whenever you discard a card, you put a +1 counter on him, and then you deal 1 damage to each opponent. So basically, if you have this out and you start cycling, you could just slowly kill people. Lava Serpent, 5 colorless, 1 red, cycles for 2. Flourishing Fox, 1 white. Whenever you cycle another card, put a +1 counter on Flourishing Fox. It cycles for 1 itself. Sanctuary Smasher, 4 colorless, 2 red. It cycles for 2 colorless, 1 red, which with Zirda out is just 1 red. And whenever you cycle it, you put a first strike counter on target creature you control. Rooting Mulcher, 4 colorless, 1 red. It cycles for 2. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile target card with cycling from your graveyard, and you may cast it, but you're not going to do that, really, unless you have maybe an instant with cycling on it that you want to cast on your turn, or sorcery. Disciple of Grace, 1 colorless, 1 white. It cycles for 2. Aven Mind Sensor, 2 colorless, 1 white. You could flash it in. If an opponent would search their library, they can only search the top 4 instead. So there is a couple like stacksy pieces and kind of hosing people down, just because if you're cycling through your deck and stuff like that, it's nice to be able to slightly stop people from being able to win that fast. Desert Kurodin, 5 colorless, 1 red. It cycles for 1 red. Angel of Ruin, 5 colorless, 2 white. It's a 5/7 flying angel that when it enters, you may exile up to 2 artifacts and or enchantments, and it has plane cycling, where you could discard it, search for a planes card, reveal it, put it in your hand. Cogwork Assembler, 3 colorless. You may pay 7 and put a token that's a copy of an artifact onto the battlefield. It gains haste. So if you have infinite mana, you can just go ahead and keep creating a token of itself and do it over and over and over and over and over until you have infinite tokens and swing out at people. Bag of Smothering, 3 colorless. It's a 1/3 flyer that whenever a player casts a spell, they lose 1 life for each spell they have cast this turn. With us cycling a bunch of cards, we barely play any actual cards, maybe 1 or 2 per turn. We could easily play this out and it will do very little to us, but it will hose down people trying to rush as fast as they can and storm off and win. Disciple of Law, 1 colorless, 1 white. Cycle it for 2. Soulbright Flamekin, Elemental Shaman, 2/1. You could pay 2 and target creature gains trample. If you've done it 3 times, you may add 8 red to your mana pool. So really, you just pay 1 into this 3 times and net 5 red, which is pretty crazy. Plus, you can give things trample, which could matter. Draenith Healer. Whenever you cycle another card you gain 1 life, you can also cycle it itself. Angel of the God Pharaoh, 4 colorless, 2 white. Cycles for 2. Valiant Rescuer, 1 colorless, 1 white. If you cycle a card each turn, you can get a 1/1, or you can cycle it itself. The cycling to get a 1/1 is not really that good. But, I mean, if you're playing against a person who's playing a little wide, or you're getting a lot of hate and you're noticing people don't have trample, it's nice to be able to put them out there as blockers. Imposing Vantasaur, 5 colorless, 1 white. Cycles for 1 white. Glinthorn Buccaneer, 1 colorless, 2 red. Minotaur Pirate with haste. Whenever you discard a card, deal 1 damage to each opponent. You can pay 1 and a red, discard a card, draw a card. Activate this ability only if it's attacking. Really, it's in there because you can deal damage by cycling easily. Walking Ballista, pretty straightforward. If you have infinite mana, you just win. But you can pay 4 to put a 1/1 counter on it. You can remove a 1/1 counter to deal 1 damage to any target. You just choose everybody's face over and over. Yidaro, Wandering Monster, 5 colorless, 2 red. It cycles for 1 and a red. It has trample haste and it's an 8/8. Whenever you cycle it, and it goes to your graveyard, you get to... I'm sorry, I'll just restart that. Wow. Whenever you cycle it, you shuffle it into your library from your graveyard. If you've done this 4 or more times, you get to put it on the battlefield instead of the graveyard. There we go. Splendor Mare, 2 colorless, 1 white, lifelink. Yeah, it has 1 and a white for cycling. Whenever you cycle it, put a lifelink counter on target creature. The boy himself, the Brash Taunter. He is 4 colorless, 1 red, indestructible, 1/1. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals damage to target opponent, and for 2 and a red, you can have it fight another creature. So this is one of the main combo pieces with the deck, because you put the Blazing Steel on it and then infinite off from there. I'll explain that more when I see the other piece, so it'll be a little bit easier. My favorite card, Luminous Broodmoth. 2 colorless, 2 white, flying insect, 3/4. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return to the battlefield under your control with flying. So the main pieces of our deck don't have flying, so this is basically just a nice piece of protection. So that's all for the creatures. As you can see, it's either creatures that do things that matter or creatures that cycle that no one cares about. And then a little bit of discarding stuff, because you do cycle quite a bit, so you can just start hosing people down slowly by discarding cards. Moving on to the artifacts, and funny enough, Blazing Sunsteel is the first one. 1 and a red. Equipped a creature gets +1/+0 for each opponent you have. And whenever equipped a creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. So if you equip this for 2 instead of 4, because of our commander, to Brash Taunter, as soon as Brash Taunter is dealt damage, you have 2 triggers. The Blazing Sunsteel triggers Brash Taunter chooses an opponent. You do this infinitely over and over, choosing the same exact targets until everybody's dead. But mostly we're cycling through doing stuff, trying to get one of these combos, or just slowly killing people out. You'd be surprised at a moderate higher level when you're not playing, obviously, against like top tier cEDH, but maybe very high power, maybe very low cEDH. A lot of people run Adnaz and other things in Mana Crypts. They don't care about their life totals. So it makes it pretty easy once you're cycling through discarding and getting pieces to close out the game. But other cool things, other than just equipping things and cycling, is things like Arcane Encyclopedia. For 3 colorless, you play it, it's an artifact. It says pay 3, tap it, draw a card. But with Zirda out, you just pay 1, tap it to draw a card. Nice to be able to help us out. Mirror Shield. 2 colorless, if equipped creature gets +0/+2 and hexproof, and whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks it, or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy that creature. It equips for 2, which with our commander actually equips for 1. Soul Ring, tap, add 2. Dampening Spear, 2 colorless artifact. If a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces colorless instead of that, of any amount. Each player casts a spell. Each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that has been cast this turn. So again, it hoses down big combo pieces, storming pieces, things like Kinnan get stopped by this. Sunset Pyramid, 2 colorless, enters with 3 brick counters on it. You can pay 2, tap it, remove a brick counter and draw a card, or you can pay 2, tap it and scry 1, which obviously reduced to just 1. Arcane Signet, taps for mana. Currency Converter. So, interesting card. 1 colorless. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. You can pay 2, tap it to draw a card and discard a card. You can tap it to put a card exiled with currency counter into your graveyard. If it's a land, you create a treasure. If it's a non-land card, you create a 2/2 black rogue creature token. So when you're cycling through your cards, you are discarding a card to draw a card. So you can cycle a card you don't really care about, put it underneath here, and then just make sure you have a land and a creature under here at all times. Or a non-land, I should say. You can put it whatever you want. All you do is go ahead and tap this to create a treasure token to help out your next turn, or create it to make a 2/2 blocker when people least expect it. Also, you could pay 2, which is 1, to tap it, draw a card, and discard a card. Mask of Avicen, 3rd time's the charm. 2 colorless, equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has hexproof. Equips for 3, but with our commander is 1. Boros Signet is put 1 into it, get a red and a white. Basalt Monolith, one of the main combo pieces, the only one I think I actually have for infinite mana. Basically, you're going to tap it to create 3, but when you use Zirda's ability, it will make it so the untap only costs 1 instead of 3, because the untap is not a mana ability. And last but not least, Fluctuator, 2 colorless. Cycle abilities you activate cost up to 2 less to activate. So this can reduce it to 0 on the activation cost. So nice piece. So as you can see, we got some spice, got some combos, got some protection, typical stuff. Obviously, if you are putting money into the deck, like I said, this is another deck I've built out of just cards I own. I bought 0 of these cards. You could switch this out for other things like Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, which I actually traded my friend for, and I will end up putting into here. Same with this. But pretty straightforward. Move on to the enchantments. Unpredictable Cyclone, 3 colorless, 2 red. Cycles for 2 colorless, but if you cycle an ability of another non-land card would cause you to draw a card. Instead, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a card that shares a card type with the cycled card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. You may put the exiled card that weren't there on the bottom of your library in a random order. So there is one card I need for this deck called Hollowed One. The big thing is that if you cycle Hollowed One, you get to keep going until you exile an artifact. So it's either going to get you a Mana Rock or it's going to get you the Basalt Monolith. Either way, it's very nice to have in this deck. So other than that, you can cycle it for 2. That's not the basic reason it's in here. Runes of Protection, red, 1 colorless, 1 white. Prevent all damage to you from a red source, or you can cycle it. So I guess this is nice to throw out there if you're playing against a guy who's playing mono red, big stompy guy, or red's in the commander's color identity. You could just prevent that damage, or you could cycle it. Astral Drift, 2 colorless, 1 white. Whenever you cycle Astral Drift or cycle another card while Astral Drift is on the battlefield, you may exile target creature. If you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It can also cycle for 2 colorless, 1 white, which with our commander is just 1 white. You don't want to cycle this card, though. It's good to have on the battlefield because then you could just start cycling to control the board down and start removing pieces off that you don't really like. Tectonic Reformation, 1 colorless, 1 red. Each land in your hand has cycle for 1 red, or you can cycle Tectonic Reformation. This is another main piece that you want out because if you get mana flooded, you could just start throwing your lands out. You don't care about them. Footfall Crater, 1 colorless, 1 red. You enchant a land, and the land has tap. Target creature gains trample and haste until the end of turn. Cycles for 1 red also. Deafening Silence. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. We don't do that, so might as well put it in there to stop other people. Flame Blitz, 1 red. At the beginning of your end step, deals 5 damage to each planeswalker. It cycles for 2 colorless. So it's kind of good if you're playing against planeswalkers, or even if someone puts a planeswalker out, you could just go ahead and throw this out and then move to your end step also. But mostly you're going to cycle it. Coordinated Charge, 4 colorless, 1 white. It cycles. That's why it's in here. Zenith Flare, 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 white. It deals X damage to any target, and you gain X life, where X is the number of cards you with cycling ability in your graveyard. So you just go ahead and cycle a bunch of cards, get yourself the Zenith Flare, either respond to someone who's trying to win by killing them, or just hit a person to gain a bunch of life to stay alive. Any way you look at it, it's a great card to have in here. Return to Dust, exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast it your main phase, you get to choose one of each. Pursue Glory, 3 colorless, 1 red. It cycles. Crash, 2 colorless, 1 red. You may sacrifice a mountain instead of paying its mana cost. Destroy target artifact. Really like cards like this. I'm a little surprised people don't play stuff like this more often because artifacts are very strong and very powerful in the format that we play right now. A lot of decks you have lands out and you don't really care about them. So I run this in my Atali deck, for instance, because I'll sacrifice 1 mountain I don't care about to destroy an artifact that is winning you the game. Will of the All Hunter. 1 colorless, 1 white. Target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. If it's being blocked, you put 2/1/1 counters on it instead. It cycles for 2. Iron Will, 1 white. Target creature +0/+4. It's nice if someone's trying to do like a big board wipe type thing and you want to protect, but it cycles. That's why it's in here. Ranking Claws, 1 colorless, 1 red. Give a creature double strike, or you can cycle it. So these are some of the ones that are a little more useful while also having cycling abilities. Shredded Sails, 1 colorless, 1 red. You either destroy target artifact, deal 4 damage to a creature with flying, or cycle it. Deju's Renunciation. Speaking of enunciation, my pronunciation of that was probably very off. 1 colorless, 1 white. Tap 2 creatures, or you could cycle it for a white. Unbreakable Formation, 2 colorless, 1 white. Gives my creatures indestructible. If I do it at main phase, they get Vigilance and +1/+1, but you want to do this to protect your board. Violent Impact, 3 colorless, 1 red. Destroy target artifact or land. Cycle for 2. Note here, I do not play land destruction in any of my decks at all. So this card is basically just destroy an artifact, but no one's going to pay 4 at a sorcery speed to do that. That's completely ass. So this is basically here for cycling. Also, that was the first sorcery card. So we'll go ahead and move that out the way. I don't destroy lands. I don't like it. I think it's kind of pointless. To me, I understand that there's lands like Gaia's Cradle and stuff like that people, and different lands other than that, that are just very powerful and they want to get rid of. I just personally don't see the point. I feel like you could just win your game without destroying lands and that it takes away from the format. But I understand that there are people that like it, and I could definitely understand situations. I would rather someone destroy a land than hold their pride together so that someone could Gaia's Cradle for 800 every time. Anyway, Chroma's Vengeance, 4 colorless, 2 white, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, or you could cycle it. Kind of don't want to do this too often because a lot of our deck runs around the artifacts, but hey, if you need to, you need to. Change of Fortune, 3 colorless, 1 red, discard your hand, draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. Of course, once you're cycling, this card becomes very good. You could do it on your turn to try to set up for a win. Inferno Jet, 5 colorless, 1 red, deals 6 damage to your target opponent, which could be pretty helpful if you need to, but it cycles, that's why it's in here. Rousing Refrain, 3 colorless, 2 red. Add a red for each card in target opponent's hand until the end of turn. You don't lose that mana. Exile Rousing Refrain with 3 suspend counters on it. You could also suspend it for 3 by paying 1 and a red. So good recurable mana source to really help us out. If this kind of sits out there and people don't pay attention to it, this can really set us up for an easy win, cycling away a ton of cards and doing what we need to, or at least a lot of damage. Slice and Dice, 4 colorless, 2 red, deal 4 damage to each creature, or you can cycle it for 2 and a red, and when you cycle it, you have it deal 1 damage to each creature. Nice little board wipe on tokens and little things. Lay Waste, 3 colorless, 1 red, destroy target land. Or what I'm going to do with it is cycle it and then joke about how I could have destroyed a land. Jailbreak. Very good card. I think this is one of the cards that's going to see more play. 1 colorless, 1 white, return target permanent card in opponent's graveyard to the battlefield under their control. When that permanent enters the battlefield, you get to return up to 1 target permanent card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. So basically, if someone has a 4-drop and I have Basalt in my graveyard, I'll just allow them to return that so that I could start comboing off. Also, it's just kind of nice to be able to get back something that you need to from the graveyard. This deck, obviously, it gets back like combo pieces or helpful things, but in other decks, I mean, can really change the game. Limit of Solidarity, 3 colorless, 1 red. You gain control of target creature, untap it, it gains haste, but you're probably going to cycle it. So that's the end of the sorceries instances. Pretty straightforward deck, like I said. Not too crazy. There's definitely things I think that could be removed and pieces that can go into it. I'm pretty sure there's a white enchantment I need to get that combos off with Brash Taunter just as the other one does. But like I said, this is kind of the deck I'm working on as my higher powered deck. As for lands, I'll just go through the ones. Has cycling, has cycling, has cycling, cycles, cycles, and then all the other ones are just dual lands that enter untapped or do stuff, or they're just basics. So I run a lot of basics because I don't really care. I mean, a lot of times you want to cycle and get rid of them, but the cycle lands are very nice because they can cycle. And the basic lands can only really cycle when you get to the point where you have that 1 card out. So it's nice to have a backup plan. But that's my Zirda the Dawnwaker deck. As I said, this is all from cards I already own. So you could easily go ahead, get that other enchantment I was talking about that I'm pretty sure works with Brash Taunter. You could go ahead and put in your Teferi Protection, other good staple white cards that you need, and powerful things. You could go ahead and get that Grim Monolith, which is just the exact same thing as Basalt Monolith, just costs a lot more money. But for terms of infining, it still does the same exact thing for this deck. And if you do go buy those pieces, I guarantee you this could be a lower powered cEDH deck. You could also just make it a lower powered deck that you enjoy by putting more whenever you discard a card things in the deck and then put in more cycling. So I really like that this deck plays this way. I'm going to try to play it as this with a high powered and infinite combo potential to be able to play something that competes with my friends and stuff like that if they are playing their higher powered decks. If I don't end up enjoying it, my plan is to cut back on it, make more of a whenever I discard type style with more cycling ability, and maybe even some recursion to bring back the Zenith Flare to hit people. So let me know what you guys think of it in the comments below. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on the deck. Again, I've played this quite a bit. I probably have won about 50% of the games I've played, and I've played against some that are around the level and some that are higher. So it's a pretty fun deck. Let me know kind of like the companions, if there's any other companions. I know Gyruda is another really fun one that has some ideas. But let me know some other commanders that you've seen that are kind of like under the radar possible cEDH commanders that work with good combos and stuff. I don't see anybody play this other than with Kenrith, I believe it is, because he makes his abilities cost 2 less. But let me know what you guys think. Any cards that you think I should order and put in the deck. Maybe I'll make a list together for the future. But that's it for today, guys. Talk to you later. Peace.